Eamonn Holmes shares devastating update about terminally ill friend James Whale. Eamonn Holmes visited his friend, James Whale, in a hospice where the TalkTV host is being cared for after telling fans he is at the end of his cancer journey. Eamonn Holmes has issued a heartbreaking update about his friend, James Whale, who has terminal cancer. The TalkTV host, 74, is currently being cared for in a hospice after telling fans he is at end of his journey, following his stage 4 kidney cancer diagnosis in 2021. Dad of 4, Eamonn, 65, who has been battling his own health concerns in recent years, went to visit James with I'm a Celebrity star, Christopher Biggins at the weekend, and revealed that their friend may tragically die this week in devastating news. Issuing a fresh health update for the presenter on GB News, Eamonn explained how James's illness is now impacting his vocal cords, making it hard for him to communicate with his loved ones. It comes after James gave a devastating insight into his cancer diagnosis last month. Speaking on his GB News show today, Eamonn said, "A friend of ours, James Whale, who I have been to see, is nearing the end of his life maybe this week." As his guest Christopher Biggins revealed that the pair went to visit James at the hospice over the weekend, the former Strictly star said, "We went on Saturday to see him, and he looks terrific, I have to say, and it was great to see him, but it's his voice that's the trouble." The irony of being a journalist and using his voice on the radio brilliantly over the years, but now his voice is going. Giving viewers an insight into what James's care facility is like after he made the move to a hospice this week, Christopher added, "What was so wonderful is the hospice that he's staying in, which I think needs something like £12 million a year or something to survive. It was just wonderful. The nurses were phenomenal, so he's being looked after royally, and I think that keeps him going, funnily enough. And he has a wonderful room with a view of trees and wonderful squirrels coming in to see him." James recently revealed he was struggling to breathe, think and talk as he entered week 7 of his 12-week prognosis back in July. The host had remained committed in sharing updates with his fans as he carried on his podcast, Tales of the Whales, alongside his wife Nadine. On the final, emotional episode posted on Saturday, August 2, recorded after half a century as a broadcaster, James issuing a 6-word statement to listeners. The radio star has been battling cancer for the past 5 years and has been dealing with 20 tumors throughout his body, including in his brain, spine, and lungs. Doctors recently informed James he has just weeks left to live, leaving his friends, family, and fans heartbroken. A touching clip from the columnist's last podcast was recently shared on TalkTV, with the journalist summoning the strength to say to his wife Nadine, "We've had a good time together, haven't we?" A supportive Nadine, who was next to him while the episode was being recorded, replied, "The best," before James whispered the words, "I love you," to her. Clearly emotional, Nadine said, "I love you too. Shall we sign off on the podcast now?" Eamonn Holmes issues heartbreaking James Whale update after star move to hospice. GB News host Eamonn Holmes has issued a new health update for after visiting fellow broadcaster James Whale as he approaches the end of his life. GB News presenter Eamonn Holmes has warned viewers that broadcaster James Whale has days left to live in a new health update. The Express columnist was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer back in 2019 and told his fans in May that he had stopped treatment because he was at the end of his cancer journey. During Monday's visit, August 4, to the London studios, the 65-year-old broadcaster woke up the nation alongside his company host Ellie Costello, where they discussed some of the biggest stories hitting the headlines. Later on in the show, Eamonn shared a fresh health update for the TalkTV star as the panel discussed their fears of death on the show. The dad of 4 revealed that James might die this week, and explained how his illness is now impacting his vocal cords, making it hard for him to communicate with his loved ones. He began, "A friend of ours, James Whale, who I have been to see, is nearing the end of his life maybe this week," as his guest Christopher Biggins revealed that the pair went to visit him over the weekend. The former Strictly star revealed, "We went on Saturday to see him, and he looks terrific, I have to say, and it was great to see him, but it's his voice that's the trouble." The irony of being a journalist and using his voice on the radio brilliantly over the years, but now his voice is going. The 76-year-old broadcaster went on to give viewers an insight into what his care facility is like after he made the move to a hospice this week. He went on, "What was so wonderful is the hospice that he's staying in, which I think needs something like £12 million a year or something to survive. It was just wonderful. The nurses were phenomenal, so he's being looked after royally, and I think that keeps him going, funnily enough. And he has a wonderful room with a view of trees and wonderful squirrels coming in to see him." The TalkTV star, who recently filmed his final interview, added, "The most tiring thing I've found, I still can't hear very well, which is more frustrating than anything else, but I've become very slow in my speech and forgetful." James now has a tumor pressing down on his temporal lobe, as well as cancer in his kidney, spine and lungs, which his wife thinks is affecting his memory, as well as causing swelling and leaking in his legs. Eamonn Holmes skewers labor with just one line over migrant vow, "No chance." GB News host Eamonn Holmes certainly didn't mince his words as he shared his frustration following Sir Keir Starmer's latest pledge. GB News host Eamonn Holmes has lashed out over the government pledging a further £100 million to a scheme that has no chance of working. During Monday's episode, August 4, the 65-year-old broadcaster woke up the nation alongside his company host Ellie Costello, where they discussed some of the biggest stories hitting the headlines. It didn't take long before the conversation turned to politics, with the biggest issue of the day being Sir Keir Starmer's pledge after he assigned a further £100 million to break up the people smuggling gangs. The funding will go towards the one-in one-out return scheme with France to help deter small boat migrants from making the illegal trip across the English Channel. The funding will also pay for 300 more National Crime Agency offices alongside new technology to improve intelligence gathering. The changes come as figures reveal over 25,000 small boat migrants have entered the UK this year alone. The Home Secretary Yvette Cooper claims Labour have set the foundations for a newer and much stronger law enforcement approach. The presenting duo welcomed former Conservative advisor Oscar Redrop onto the program to discuss the news, and Eamonn certainly didn't waste any time in sharing his frustration on the matter. He began, "What a load of bunk. Why are we wasting £100 million on this?" Oscar countered, "This is the #1 issue for voters. Here we go, Labour Party, if you solve this mission, you could win the next election, but it feels as though just a year into this story that they've given up. This announcement today on a quiet August Monday morning politically is giving up." Eamonn added, "What if they actually don't know they've given up? What if they don't know there's no incentive in France for all of this? That would worry me more, that they actually haven't got the wit to realize this has no chance of working." The former politician agreed, "It has no chance of working. It is a relatively small amount of money, unfortunately, and the real thing here is they're pushing this £100 million into something that is clearly not working. This is counterproductive, they're wasting money. These are brutal crime organizations that profiteer off these channel crossings. If they did see this announcement, they would be laughing at it." It didn't take long before fans flooded to X, formerly known as Twitter, as they shared their concerns online, with one user posting, "Starmer knows this, we all know this, it's basically a £100 million smoke and mirrors trick. But that's what Starmer is about, tricks. Starmer could absolutely stop the boats within a week, but he absolutely won't." Anater agreed, "Gangs are smashed when they no longer have a product to sell. At the moment they are selling the possibility of UK residency, housing, and welfare, paid for by the British taxpayer." A third chimed in with, £100 million to smash gangs, but still no proper support for asylum seekers or tackling root causes like war and poverty. It's all smoke and mirrors while vulnerable people pay the price. Where's the real solution, Eamonn?